With the Packers' second-round pick number 54, they decide to draft tackle Anthony Belton from North Carolina State. Now, right before this pick happened, I think there are a few different guys that made a lot of sense to me, specifically at cornerback with Trey Amos being available, Siobhan Revel also being available, two guys who I think would be really solid. And I'm honestly pretty surprised to see the Packers take a tackle here. I think if we look at the Packers' current offensive line situation, with the move they made this offseason, bringing in Aaron Banks as a guard, moving Elton Jenkins to center, it felt to me like the Packers had plenty of depth on the offensive line. And so I didn't think that coming into this draft, offensive line was a massive need. We do know the Packers have said for a long time they don't draft for need, and I think that probably does work out well lots of the time for them. And so I am pretty surprised to see them take a tackle there. And I think that when you just look at the Packers in the future, the fact that Rasheed Walker, who started at left tackle pretty much all year last season, he's going to be a free agent after next year. So is Sean Ryan, unless they decide to bring either of those guys back. But when you look at the fact they drafted Jordan Morgan, first round last year, tackle. He played some guard. He played some right guard before getting injured last year. It really felt to me like before they even made this pick that they had enough guys for 2025 and maybe even looking ahead to 2026, just because I'd assume that Jordan Morgan would compete with Rasheed Walker at left tackle. I thought that maybe Morgan could compete with, Sean Ryan for right guard. So at least one of those positions he'd probably start heading into 2025. But I did not see them taking a tackle this early. And so I think the one thing is true is you can never, have too many offensive linemen. It's not ever really the most exciting pick, but you never want to get to a point where you even have one weak link on the offensive line, because if you have one guy who's terrible, it really throws every single thing off. And so while this pick didn't really excite me, I do trust the Packers when it comes to drafting offensive linemen. Now, the thing is here with Anthony Belton, just looking at the overall consensus about where people thought he would go, looking at NFL Draft Buzz, his overall rank, if you combine just most draft sites and experts, was 86.4 overall, and he went, at 54 to the Packers. If we look at Dane Brugler, who has a lot of great draft content for The Athletic, in his draft guide, The Beast, he had him at rank number 94. PFF had this guy ranked at, let me find it right here, at 98. So this is someone that some people maybe thought would go a lot later. And the Packers, have a third-round pick. I think it's around 87. So he could potentially have been available there, possibly. I did see here that Todd McShay, according to NFL Draft Buzz, does have Belton at 53. So at least there's someone there who sort of sees what the Packers see. But the Packers aren't concerned about, where other people have him ranked. And I think, looking at him, reading about him a little bit, he seems to still need to develop a little bit more. And the Packers are very good at developing offensive linemen. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I think this is a bad pick, because I think just looking at what the Packers have done with offensive linemen outside of round one for a long, long time, they always seem to strike gold a lot of the time. The fact that Rasheed Walker's a seventh rounder, started last season, and was pretty solid. I think he's an average tackle, but to get that out of a seventh rounder, incredible. Same with Zach Tom, fourth rounder. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that the Packers can't turn this guy into one of the best tackles in the NFL. They do it pretty consistently outside of round one. And so just because of that, the Packers' history, I think that, they deserve a lot of trust in what they do, especially when it comes to developing tackles. But let me read this here from Dane Brugler's guide. First off, this guy is 6'6", 336 pounds. He's 24 years old. It says here in The Beast from Dane Brugler, a 3-year starter at NC State, Belton lined up at left tackle in former offensive coordinator Robert Anae's zone blocking scheme. After 2 years at Georgia Military College, he transferred to the Wolfpack and entrenched himself as a starting left tackle the past 3 seasons. Because of his size, you don't need to know his jersey number to spot him on film. He received the nickname Escalade inside the NC State program because of the way he can move. He can get in the way as a blocker and control rushers if his hands are right, big if. Overall, Belton uses his size and length to keep the game on his terms, staying centered and forcing defenders to try to go through him. When he is unable to do that, his body control and footwork break down quickly, which needs to be further addressed by NFL coaching. With improved consistency, he has the tools to get on the field and contribute. So as I said, it seems like the overall consensus from most people here regarding the draft see him as a maybe more of a third round guy. Brugler here says third to fourth rounder, but the Packers clearly see something else there. And with their ability to develop offensive linemen at I'd say that they're some of the best in the NFL at doing so. They clearly see a guy that has a lot of tools and a lot of physical abilities that they can potentially train up to become a really solid tackle in the NFL. So the good thing about this is the Packers I would say they're pretty loaded at offensive line, which is a thing that most teams would like to be in that position. And so now even looking at 2026, Rasheed Walker could be gone, Sean Ryan could be gone. Even if both of those guys go, you now have Jordan Morgan that now he doesn't have to become a tackle. He could really be a guard, and maybe that's why they take Belton here. Maybe they really do see Jordan Morgan as a guard and want him to compete there. And maybe they want to see Anthony Belton compete with Rasheed Walker at left tackle in heading into the 2025 season. And I think the fact that he's a second rounder, I assume we'll see him competing right away for that starting left tackle spot. And so I just assume, I would assume that Morgan stays at guard. The fact they're drafting Belton here, who played pretty much all left tackle during his time the past few seasons, I assume that Belton will probably be the future left tackle if you're drafting him in the second round. And so the good thing is Jordan Love is going to be protected for the foreseeable future. The Packers now heading into 2026, they have a lot of different things they can do with the offensive line. So all in all, I think it's a fine move, not the most exciting move. I think, as I said, if they drafted a corner there, I think I'll probably be more excited. But just looking at what the Packers have done in years past with these guys, with offensive linemen, I think it'll probably end up working out because with these guys, it typically does with the Packers' ability to coach up these offensive linemen. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you want more draft content, Packers draft content, feel free to turn on the post notifications so you don't miss any content. And I'll see you guys next time.